My deep appreciation of theater history was instilled in me by Tom Empey, a college mentor to me and hundreds of others. While teaching Greek theater terms, he would grab the fabric of his slacks and say, "You see these pants? Euripides Eumenides," making light of content that could be considered rather dry and stuffy while still maintaining respect for the art, which is what I want to do with this podcast. For each episode, I invite a guest from the many paths my theater career has taken me down. I give my guest no idea what we'll be talking about, but they know we're going to find an outrageous story about theater history and perhaps get a better understanding about why we're still doing it after all these years. So welcome to Euripides Eumenides, and I am your host, Aaron Odom.
Apocalypse, I said, why you wanna show up now? Just when the heart of my life was getting good. I'll give you one more chance. Walk on out of the door, yeah. Get your ass to getting where the getting is good.
Hello, Eumenidites. This is Aaron Odom from Trident Theater, bringing you another episode of Euripides Eumenides, a theater history podcast. And I want to get right into this episode because it's a long one. I could have split this one into 2 episodes. I kind of wanted to, so I can use the rest of the month to focus on my live in-person episode at the end of September 2023. But frankly, I couldn't find a good spot to split this one in half, and it's much better told all at once anyway. Plus, I just did that with the Joe Orton episodes, and those are pretty fun. So, we'll start this episode in a moment. But I do want to take some time and welcome my new listeners in South Africa and the Caribbean island of St. Lucia. Welcome. I'm very pleasantly surprised to see my audiences grow there. Okay, but let's get to it. The guest for this episode is content creator Jason Roy Gaston, a self-proclaimed niche TikTok celebrity. You can find him there at Jason Roy Gaston. I'll put a link in the show notes. There, Jason dives into a lot of things having to do with pop culture. He's a big fan of several fictional universes, aren't we all, though? But I particularly enjoy his dramatic readings of poorly worded or misspelled signs. Jason has some cool content coming up on his YouTube page as well, and I'm going to let him describe that as we begin the episode today. But just for Jason, I found this topic, since he is such a fan of all things pop culture. We had an absolute blast pondering this topic, and you get the fruits of that discussion now. Without further ado, here it is, Broadway actors or game show hosts. And so at this point, Jason, you're not just a repository of dramatic readings of ridiculous signs, and
no, there's so much more to me than that. I have hopes, I have dreams, I have feelings, I have ambitions, I have a burning sensation when I pee. I have all of those things.
Contact your doctor if any of the following occurs for your minor headache. If you die, anyway.
Yes, if you die, contact your doctor. That's how my HMO works, I believe. If you die, contact us.
I will say, though, that your videos have caused me to really appreciate the weekends in summer as yard sale season, or as you've seen them as yard sard and
yard sard
and garge sard, or
Gurge sale. It's 2 words. Could you not spell check 2 words?
And I can just see that person getting there. So I spelled yard, I spelled sard. I only had 1 piece of paper, Ma, and it's got 2 sides, and I screwed up on the back one, too.
In their defense, it might have been something they did on purpose. I know there are some grammatically disabled people out there, but I will misspell things on purpose just for the fun of it. I don't know. The funny thing is I'm actually holding a garage sale this weekend in the 105-degree Texas heat right now, which is the smartest thing I've ever done in my entire life. So tomorrow I may just put a yard sard sign in front of my house just to see if it ups the business. Just like, we had to stop and see the dumb person who put up that yard sard sign. Wait, aren't you the fella from TikTok?
Hey!
Oh my God.
Enjoy my fondue set. Anyway.
I ain't selling my fondue set. I love me.
Oh, okay. Okay, never mind. Sorry about that. But it sounds like, just chatting with you a bit, you actually are kind of expanding your universe, as it were. So you've got some new stuff on your YouTube channel going on.
Yes, I have recently entered a partnership with my good friend Jason Hatswell. He's a video editor and a videographer from Australia. And we've known each other for about a year, and he is officially coming on board my YouTube channel. We did an announcement video a few days ago, but we are starting a brand new podcast. It's going to be weekly, and it's called "If You Don't Agree, You're Wrong." And we are going to be rapid fire hitting pop culture phenomenon that is coming out. For example, our first show, we are going to be covering Disenchantment, Futurama, Solar Opposites, One Piece. And there were several more, but we're going to give ourselves like 5 minutes to talk about it as much as we can, and then no, go on. It's kind of like Whose Line Is It Anyway meets Wait, Don't Tell Me meets a Texan and an Australian probably throwing obscenities at each other by the time the show's over with. We're really looking forward to that.
I love it. And here, I'll give you an idea for one. I am just flabbergasted by the actual political ramifications of the Taylor Swift Eras tour, where you have prime ministers and heads of state reaching out to her and being like, please bring your show here. It will mean so much to us.
Taylor Swift needs to run for president.
I think so.
If we're going to have a celebrity in the White House, Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
And what other president could bring along like 20 first, I guess they call them first gentlemen, 20 first gentlemen or 20 ex-first gentlemen. And us still be on her side.
Oh, absolutely.
Taylor Swift. I don't know how old is Taylor Swift. I don't know. She's like 20s, maybe early 30s. I have no idea. But
I bet we could. I bet based on just the amount of voters she would bring to the table.
Oh, you know, she would destroy anyone who ran against her.
Kids would be like lining up, like, "Oh yeah, I'm 21." You're like, okay.
Yeah, could you imagine how fun those debates would be? Somebody would just pop up there and say, Taylor Swift, in 2012, you said this very troublesome thing. How do you respond? And she goes, it's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me. And like her approval rating would just explode. Yeah,
everybody would be like, oh, that's so endearing.
She couldn't do any worse than what we've had. Let's put Taylor Swift in the White House. President Swift.
I like it.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, Jason, that sounds awesome. Looking forward to seeing some of that. I did see that sketch you guys wrote. That was so freaking funny. And so if that's
it wasn't a sketch, that was actually just us.
Oh, okay,
that's
cool.
Just what happens. we just film things. It's the same way they film any kind of Gary Busey movie. There's no script. They just follow them around.
Yeah.
You're still back there.
Oh, man.
That 4-car pileup was not my fault.
I just was looking for some
Coca-Cola.
Coca-Cola.
You got any Coca-Cola?
Well, since we are slinging pop culture references already, I thought, I brought you here for a reason. And as I am wont to do, I like to ask a question of my guests to get things rolling. And as you and I both have history in the theater world,
theater.
I will ask you this. You've often heard of a performer having it.
Yes. Chlamydia.
That was not the answer I expected.
Oh, okay. I was sorry. I went off on a tangent there.
No. I was looking for syphilis.
No. We've all had that at some point or another in the theater.
Yeah. Well, for me, it came up in a middle school spelling bee.
Could you use that in a sentence, please? Yo mama has syphilis.
So when I talk about having it, to you, what does it mean?
Well, I think it can be summed up in one word, and that is presence.
Ah, I like that.
I think that whenever somebody takes the stage, they are somebody that you not only are forced for a moment to pay attention to, but it's somebody that you want to pay attention to. One actor that I've always noticed has instantaneous it, as you put it, is James Earl Jones.
Oh, man.
Because not only is he stoic, but he has the voice, and anytime he is on screen, you just want to watch him. Coming to America 2 was rancid possum feces. But anytime that King Joffrey Joffre of Zamunda was on screen, I was transfixed because James Earl Jones has it.
Yeah. Yeah. And they just recently named that Broadway theater after him too.
Well deserved as well.
Absolutely.
I hear in the speech he gave, he just got up there and said, "It's about time." And
yeah. Presents. There it is.
Yes.
Well, anyway, speaking of celebrities, America recently lost one of its favorite celebrities. Man, it's been a year.
We lost several. We lost several in a week. You're going to have to narrow it down.
Yeah. Well, who I'm talking about is retired game show host and staunch advocate of spaying and neutering pets, Bob Barker, passed away at age 99 on August 26, 2023.
Yes. He was the closest to 100 without going over.
Yeah. So he wins both showcases.
The sad thing is, I made that joke on TikTok like literally the second after he passed away. I was like, oh, great joke. It's very wrong. I'm going to do it. I did it on TikTok. Boom. And then everybody was doing it. I guess everybody had the same idea. And I'm like, everybody's going to think that I'm ripping off everybody else. But I actually just came up with that joke on my own.
I just thought of it. Yes. But, as I can see, and as most people know, many viewers in America fondly remember Barker as the host of The Price is Right, the popular morning TV game show in which contestants were selected directly from the audience for a chance to win heaps of cash and prizes. And for many, Bob Barker seemed like a well-known, glamorous, and generous uncle or grandfather. We could always relate to Bob Barker. I mean, everybody talks about, how friendly he was. And I remember more as, he was very warm and welcoming, but there was just kind of that holdover from an older era when a woman would get on stage and
he's gonna smack
give him a big smack, or they'd give one to him. And you're like, woo, Bob, you're swimming in it, buddy. I mean,
it's the voice. It's the voice. Bob Barker had that amazing voice. Bob Barker, let's face it, through kids born in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, this man babysat them while they were homesick.
Right? Yes.
He got us through so many cases of chicken pox and flu and hooky and all those other diseases we came up with. And him and Rod Roddy, you can't forget Rod Roddy, because they were just the duo right there. But I remember during the pandemic, I actually asked, is Bob Barker okay? Has anybody checked on Bob Barker?
Has he been spayed or neutered?
Yeah, has he? Well, I'm sure he has been. I think that was the settlement back in the 80s, is that he was supposed to. If you know, you know.
If you're going to be kissing all those ladies on stage, we want to make sure you're safe.
Exactly. When they start bringing up the little water spray bottles, like, no, Bob, no.
I always remember his super long, very phallic microphone.
Yes. He Drew Carey inherited that. Yeah, it was just, I don't even know. Is that a real microphone, or is that just like a prop?
I just don't understand the practicality of it.
I don't either.
I don't want to hold up here like I'm licking an ice cream cone. I'd rather held it down by my navel so I can speak that way.
Maybe he's compensating for something.
Being neutered. Anyway, but check this out. Bob Barker was the host of Price is Right from 1972 to 2007.
That is incredible. What is that?
35 years.
I didn't even want to live for 35 years. I can't imagine having a job for 35 years. But at least it was a fun job.
It was a fun job.
Anything that gets you that close to the Plinko board has got to be fun, because who has not wanted to climb that Adonis of game show props and just drop things down? I could I could play Plinko and lose everything, and it would still be the greatest day of my life.
Just give me the disc again. Just give me it again. It's fun. And when I was growing up, right after that, soap opera started. So you'd finish in the Mark Goodson television production. Screen would go black, and then these pretty people with stupid problems would come on.
Like sands through the hourglass. Oh, all the days of our lives. I had to explain to my students the other day what a soap opera was. They had no idea. What's a soap opera? Is that like where people get clean? Well,
very dramatically.
They got a little dirty every once in a while, but no.
Mm-hmm. Nobody knew who got anybody pregnant.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it was always a mystery.
But speaking of Price is Right, I mean, I would say, you and I grew up in similar generation. I think it's hard for us to imagine a world without game shows. They've just been a staple of the environment, being parodied in one way or another, or just actually, taken seriously. But that's also because game shows have been around pretty much since the inception of broadcasting.
Yes.
Yeah. The earliest show that can be remembered began in 1923 and was run by a newspaper, the Brooklyn Daily Eagle, which offered a radio broadcast asking stumping questions, big ones that people might not really know. Here's a quote. In the early stages, shows like Professor Quiz and Ask It Basket simply asked audience members questions and gave the high scorer $25. Quiz Kids and Information Please asked listeners to mail questions in for panelists to answer, with a few dollars awarded for people whose questions were stumpers. End quote.
Very interesting.
Yeah, you're like, okay.
The early days of radio has always fascinated me just because they were figuring it out all the time.
Right.
Like, it blew my mind that they had to pass a law that said a radio station had to stay on one frequency. You couldn't move your frequencies around, because they would move their frequencies around and try to stomp each other out.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody could listen to them. I just find that so fascinating, the era of just figuring everything out.
And then the indignancy of people going, what do you mean we can't do that?
I know. I'm sorry. I thought this was America. With those transatlantic accents. How dare you, sir? How dare you? What does it say about a country in which we cannot destroy our competition by simply a stronger signal? What would the founding fathers say? Well, sir, they'd say, what the hell is radio?
George Washington would say, where are my teeth?
They freed who?
Well, I'm going to go on and give a little bit more of a history of game shows, so we kind of have a springboard. And you're probably wondering, why are we talking about this on a theater history podcast? But I promise you, I'll get there.
Game shows are theater. They are theater. That's the way I see it.
That is not wrong. Now, game shows basically lived on radio until commercial television began in the United States on July 1st, 1941. On television, game shows seemed a perfect way to have sponsors front and center in front of viewing audiences. In fact, many sponsors had their names in the title of shows, and many sponsors' products were offered as prizes. So that always cracked me up too. You're trying to get this young, hip audience that are buying televisions and stuff, and you're like, sponsored by Geritol. Yeah, there you go, figuring it out.
What is Geritol? Is that like a milkshake? I don't know. I don't know if you can hear this, but I have a visitor in my lap.
No. One of your several cats. Oh, goodness. And which one is that?
This is Demona.
Demona.
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. Well, I'm glad you have a sidekick there who can help you answer some of these questions.
She's like, what is a game show? I don't know. Pet me.
I don't know. Love it. So, while many viewers enjoyed the programs and tuning in to see how they matched their on-air panelists, there were factions that believed game shows represented illegal lotteries.
Oh, goodness. Of course they did.
The
fun police are here.
Wait a minute. Who's enjoying themselves? No!
I want to speak to the manager!
So, yeah, these factions actually challenged game shows in court, believing them to be illegal lotteries. And it was ultimately determined that they were not. The fun police were sent home.
Yes.
Now, these court proceedings were actually brought to the Supreme Court in 1954 by the
they went all the way to the Supreme Court.
Supreme Court.
The Supreme Court, because that's what we need them to waste their times on, is game shows, as opposed to them acting like being on the Supreme Court is a game show nowadays.
Oh,
I just made it to the Supreme Court. Look at all my prizes.
No, I don't have donors. Now, like I said, these were actually brought to the Supreme Court in 1954 by the FCC. So you can imagine just how prolific game shows had become to get this much attention.
Oh, yes.
By the end of World War II, television was still relatively new in American homes. And by 1950, it's estimated that only 9% of homes had a television set. By the end of the decade, 90% of homes had a television set.
Good times.
I know, right? However, game shows suffered heavily in 1955.
And I know why. It's one of my favorite eras.
Oh, God. If you've ever seen the brilliant movie Quiz Show, you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
It seems that many shows were rigging their outcomes behind the scenes, and many contestants were getting paid well to go along with scripting television that seemed spontaneous. Many former contestants came forward with indisputable evidence that shows were unfair, and by the end of the decade, numerous court proceedings occurred, some in the Supreme Court. Again, the result of this was a flurry of new legislation regulating how game shows could be conducted. And for many years following, game shows seemed to be hiding in embarrassment. Oh, that just sucks so bad.
My favorite story from that era involved Dr. Joyce Brothers.
What?
Because, oh yes, Dr. Joyce Brothers was a contestant on one of those game shows, and I can't remember which one it was, but she was an extremely intelligent person, just extremely intelligent. And whenever she found out, for example, that the category that day was going to be sports, she learned everything she could about sports to be ready for the next day. Well, apparently they got tired of her being on the show, because you can't have an intelligent woman on the show in 1950s because that makes the men feel upset. And so they decided to throw a very unfair question at her that involved sports, but it was about sports referees, and thinking that was going to get rid of Dr. Brothers. Well, it turns out Dr. Brothers was a much more intelligent than they assumed she was, because she saw no differentiation between teams and referees. So she knew the answer that they thought she was going to lose. Now, I don't know what happened to that, because a professor told me this in college, and that was many years ago. Yeah, I just love that. So Dr. Brothers, wherever she has passed away, hasn't she? Yes.
Yeah.
Dr. Brothers, wherever you are, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Stick it to the man.
And obviously didn't crush her fame.
No, it did not. Well, I mean, how could you crush your fame by outsmarting the bad guys? That's just amazing.
Yep. Worked for James Bond.
Absolutely.
Now, game shows launched a minor comeback in the 1960s, doing what they could to regain the affection of American TV audiences with likable content, celebrity guests, modest payout, but ultimately a wholesome time in front of the screen.
Absolutely. You know, everybody, the American public has a very short attention span. That's the reason why Bill Cosby will be back one day.
Oh, God.
He will be.
Oh, God.
And everybody will say, I missed his wholesome content.
and then you're going, watch your drinks.
But what about the
yeah?
And people will not know what we're talking about.
Yep.
BoJack Horseman did a brilliant episode about that one time.
Ooh,
where Peter Papopoulos, who's this giant hippopotamus, and he's hosting a game show. And during one of the press tours, this girl goes, well, what about all those allegations from those women 10 years ago? And everybody's like, what? What are you talking about? You remember those allegations that were all over the news? What? Yes, they were all over the news. And you see everybody in the audience go,
they get on their phones and Google. Tick, tick, tick.
And it just causes this huge scandal again. And it's an amazing. That was an amazing.
Oh, that's
show.
Great.
They also touched on game shows for a while, which I thought was very cool.
Very timely today.
Yes.
By the 1970s, when game shows seemed to be somewhat less gauche, slick and likable producers like Merv Griffin and Mark Goodson found a way to make game shows much more flashy, with lots of colors, really big celebrity guests and hosts, and much bigger cash prizes.
Yes.
And then the syndication of shows and the addition of cable TV in the 70s and 80s allowed for an onslaught of new game shows. Check this. This is ridiculous. I love this. Quote, game shows blossomed in the 1970s. At one point in the decade, the three major broadcast networks had a total of 19 game shows on the air.
Oh my gosh.
Half-hour game shows, and there
That's
were 19
amazing.
of them you could watch every day.
I remember lots of game shows whenever I was a kid. You know, I loved The Price is Right. I loved Press Your Luck was also another one that I just
no
loved.
whammies, no whammies, no whammies.
Oh yeah. Card Sharks was another one that I loved. And I don't know, it's like I miss that. That and Saturday morning cartoons are just two things that I had that my kids never will. And I think that is unfair.
And you know what? When the game show network started up, I remember going, oh my God, I can't wait. And you'd turn it on and like 2 episodes in, you're like, what else is on?
Yeah, pretty much. I don't know. There was something rare about game shows, especially whenever you were a kid, because they were always on while you were in school. So any chance to watch them was special.
Right?
It was special. It was almost something that was forbidden for small people. And and now just whenever you have a whole channel devoted to them, it's just not special anymore.
Right. You can get it whenever you want. And so it's like, well,
Exactly.
didn't have to go far for that. So here's a continuation of this quote. An abundance of syndicated offerings at the same time meant that in some cities, it was possible to have the TV on continuously from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. And by switching the channel at the right times, see nothing but game shows.
That sounds fun.
I know, right?
That sounds so fun.
And see, that's another thing. My mother loves Jeopardy, and she has 2 channels that will play it once at 6 o'clock and once at 6:30. So if you miss 6 o'clock, hey, you're fine.
I used to live with my grandmother while I was going to college, and we had that same situation.
Yep.
So I would watch Jeopardy at 3:30,
Mhm.
and then whenever she watched it at 5:30, I would go in there and I would answer all the questions. And she would just look at me like, we need to get you on this show. You're smart. No, Granny, everybody knows this.
Yeah, come on.
I had her snowed for about 3 years that I was this incredibly smart person, but I was cheating the entire time. So
what
Granny,
happened when she finally found out?
Sorry. She never found out, but she knows now. I'm sorry. If I'm struck by lightning, that was not God. That was my grandmother. You little son of a bitch.
Well, it'll be a much shorter episode.
Yes, it will be. But what a climax.
Yeah. By the 1990s, though, the golden era of game shows seemed to be coming to a close. Cable networks tried to reach their target audiences, with the most success coming out of Nickelodeon and their shows like Double Dare, Nick Arcade, and Legends of the Hidden Temple.
Loved Double Dare.
Oh my God, right?
Whenever I was a kid, I went to Universal Studios whenever they had Nickelodeon Studios open there.
Yeah.
And I got to see the Double Dare stage in person. They weren't filming, but I got to see the stage. And I just remember just looking over the stage of where I wanted to be so badly, and these hopes and dreams were, and just looking at it thinking, it's so small. How do they fit all of the obstacles in there? I still don't know to this day. I'll watch old episodes and I'm like, that stage just looks so much bigger there, but it was so small in real life.
Yeah. Well, sound stages often are. And
yeah, it's crazy.
I've gone to live tapings of shows before too. And, you know, when they pan out over the crowd and everything, it's really quick and everything. And you don't see it all that much. I went to the Tonight Show when Jay Leno was running it several times when I was in college. And I think that audience sat about, I don't know, maybe 500 to 600. So it wasn't huge, but I mean, you're just like, whoa, okay. Well,
yeah.
I thought there was like,
don't fall off the stage, Jay.
Yeah. By 1994, The Price is Right was and still is the only classic style game show run specifically on one major network. All the rest, including the most popular like Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy and Family Feud, are syndicated, so any local channel can run them. By the end of the 90s and into the 2000s, game shows made a transition to either big studio, high-stakes programs like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire or The Weakest Link, or they would become long-term reality competition series like Survivor or The Bachelor or The Bachelorette. However, some markets seem to pine for the good old days, and shows like Let's Make a Deal, The $100,000 Pyramid, those ones have been rebooted for a modern audience, but with homage to the classics. I love that. I mean, yes. I remember, you know, you tell people about, you don't know about the $64,000 question. They're like, on a game show? That's not a lot of money. You're like, it was back then. It was a huge deal.
Oh, gosh, I loved watching the last round where the one person is trying to get the other one to guess the question, and just the frustration the anguish was delicious. I think that's the one show that I enjoyed more whenever they lost than when they won, just because the reactions. That one and Super Password, I just loved those two.
I remember a stand-up comedian at some point going, is it just me, or are celebrity guests on a game show like telepathic? He's like, I remember watching Password once, and it was like, okay, Betty White, you go ahead and ask Tim here from Akron, Ohio, see if he can guess the password. And she sits there and looks at him and goes, food. And he goes, rhubarb. And yep, that was it. Absolutely.
Yes, Betty White had powers that none of us could comprehend. And anybody sitting at home that ever questioned them, like, I think Betty White may have powers. Betty White would just, on TV, just look at the screen like this. And it would instantly silence you.
I can't remember. And you'd wet your pants and have to run
food. Rhubarb.
Now, Even though there have been a plethora of game show titles, formats, styles, types of prizes, etc., there is one thing that has been virtually consistent in all game shows. The one person managing the game, mediating between contestants, and just overall, they're the master of ceremonies, the game show host. And that's what we're talking about today as game show hosts.
All the women want him and all the men want to be him.
Oh, man. And the most outlandish fashions, especially in the 70s. My God.
Butterfly collars and plaid.
And what couch did you have to strip to get that?
I love that hair.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh, my gosh. I want it. It needs to come back. I want the upholstery suits to come back.
Yes, absolutely. Now, in the early days of game shows, since most of the hosts were on the radio, a lot of shows would hire a radio man for their television programs. Mike Richards, executive producer for both The Price is Right and Let's Make a Deal, refers to these early hosts as middle-aged men, quote, with a great voice and great hair, basically a radio guy who had a face for TV.
I can see that, yes.
Right. And I, in my research, I looked so many of these guys up, and they're like, and so started out as a disc jockey for blah, 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 and this person started out as the weather, for blah, blah, blah. And you're like, oh, well, I guess that makes sense because, you think of a game show host and you think of the guy with a really great voice. And
absolutely. It's the reason why the TV hosts of the 70s, 80s usually were weathermen or newscasters on because Pat Sajak, I believe, was a meteorologist, and even Oprah Winfrey. I know it's not a game show, but Oprah Winfrey was a television anchor for the very longest time. So it's just a continuation of that.
Right. So if you're a producer and you're getting ready to pick your game show host, it has to be somebody affable and approachable. It has to be somebody who can keep a million parts going of a show that could potentially have infinite outcomes by the end of a single episode. So the host has to be somebody who an audience can trust to be, quote, this is a quote I found, somebody listed these out. Here's your essential game show host characteristics. Part traffic cop, part stand-up comedian, and part kindly uncle.
I can see that, yes.
All of them.
Always encouraging you during these games, no matter how stone dumb you are.
Right. And sometimes they have to look at somebody and let them down hard or let them down easy,
Yes. Price is Right bloopers were always my favorite. Going back to Bob Barker, we've all seen the one where that woman did not understand high-low. And still won by the end just out of sheer luck. And Bob Barker, I've never seen him that unbuckled before. He had to sit down at the end, just like
shake his head, take a breath, pray.
What just happened? he had a cadence to his voice. I try to imitate celebrities. Yeah. I don't even know where to begin with Bob Barker because no one sounds like him. No one has ever sounded like him. I don't think anybody will ever sound like him.
Yeah,
he was on an episode he was a guest star in an episode of SpongeBob one time, and I didn't realize it was Bob Barker, but I just thought, oh, that sounds like Bob Barker. That is Bob Barker. SpongeBob. We're here to take care of the snails, SpongeBob.
Have them spayed and neutered.
I don't know what it is about his voice. And I've never heard anybody else imitate him either. That's the funny part. None of the celebrity need to get a hold of the dude with the puppets. What's his name? Frank something or other. Frank Caliendo?
Caliendo. Yeah.
Yeah, we need to get a hold of him. Can you do Bob Barker? If he can't do it, nobody can.
That's true. Yeah.
But if he tries, his head may explode. So
you know what? He may be one of those inimitable people. It's like it's just a spoken code. It's like we don't do Bob.
Yeah, we don't do Bob. No.
Yeah.
Bob does not like that. Well, Bob's not with us. He still doesn't like it.
So, given those characteristics, it shouldn't be hard to understand that when some game shows needed to grow their audience, television producers would look to another market where performers would have those aforementioned qualities on a nightly basis. Broadway. So I'm going to go ahead and kick things off here with Broadway actors who then eventually became game show hosts. And this is a fantastic list. We'll start with Groucho Marx.
Would that be Broadway or would that be vaudeville?
Oh, he did it all. I'll give you a bit.
Okay, yeah. Groucho would do it all, wouldn't he?
Yep. In the
Yeah,
post-World War II heyday of game show popularity, before the big bust in 1955, one such program was You Bet Your Life, a quiz show in which several contestants would be brought out two at a time. They're total strangers to each other, and they would depend upon each other to answer several questions. The contestants could also win money if they would guess a secret word that was revealed to the audience before the contestants got on stage. As their first host, producers hired longtime comedy favorite Groucho Marx. And by this time in his career, Groucho Marx hit something of a slump. Yes. So in the 50s, he wasn't doing much. Groucho officially began his career as a child in a singing act, all meant to bring in money to his low-income family. And eventually his brothers got into the act, the Marx Brothers, and they went on the road. But at this time, they were not known as the Marx Brothers. As a singing group, they were known as the Four Nightingales, or when they performed with their mother and aunt, they were known as the Six Mascots. And I couldn't figure out why. I don't think they brought out heads and, played different animals for sports teams or anything, but that's just what they call themselves. And their act was a pretty far cry from what we know as the Marx Brothers today. They would sing classical, serious, or operatic songs and perform dramatic readings. Very somber stuff indeed.
There's hope for me to be a comedy legend, in other words.
There it is. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I mean, I just can't imagine Groucho Marx getting out there with a skull and go, last boy Eric, I knew him well.
It was the best of times. It was the waste of times. Speaking of the waste of times, we do need some money right now.
Now, they got their start in comedy in 1912 after a rather fateful night in an opera house in Nacogdoches, Texas.
Ah, yes. Nacogdoches. Know it well.
Uh-huh. It seems that in the middle of their act, someone ran by their venue, the Nacogdoches Opera House, shouting about a runaway mule. And apparently, due to the lack of sensational news happening right at that moment and the nature of their show, a number of people heard this runaway mule, and they got up from their seats in the Marx Brothers show to investigate the hubbub.
You hear that, Gladys? There's a runaway mule outside. We need to get out there and go take a look-see.
Did he say runaway mule? I think he did, Jethro. Let's go!
I tried to see the runaway mule, but it done runned away too fast.
Yep.
We're going to stay out here on the street and wait and see if maybe it might run away right past us again.
Actually, what they did was they then just went back to their seats because the show was still going on. And soon after they returned, the Marx Brothers went off script from their usual singing routine to have fun at the audience's expense for leaving the show. And here are a couple quips directly from Groucho. Nacogdoches is full of cockroaches. That's a good one. The jackass is the state flower of Texas. And it just came to him. He was 22. He's sitting there doing all these serious songs and everything. And then he's like, no, hell with it. You guys left our show. We can make fun of you.
It's kind of funny. If you've ever read Howard Stern's book, that's kind of what started his persona on the radio, is that he was doing a straight radio interview. And I don't even remember what it's been. It's been years since I've read that book, but something just set him off to where he just started going off on the air.
Yeah.
He's like, you believe this guy? He just does this and this and this and this. It's just funny how history parallels itself with entertainers.
Oh, yeah.
I just love that.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
But check this out. Rather than being offended by being made fun of directly on stage, the audience ate it up. I read some article where they're like, obviously, the Marx Brothers didn't understand the Texas sense of humor.
Yeah, there's nothing you can say to a Texan we don't say to ourselves every morning when we wake up and look in a mirror.
That's right. I am dumb and fat and stupid. Oh, okay. All right. Good.
You gotta really dig deep to hurt one of our feelings. What? Our state is dry and never rains? I didn't notice. Goodness. I'm so glad that you pointed that out. We got dumb people in our state? No.
You got our number there, didn't you? All right. So the audience loved this so much, and it became such a buzz that it got around to neighboring communities, and their act, therefore, was hired to come perform insult comedy to Texan audiences.
I love it. I love it. That just seems so Groucho to me.
Yeah.
I can hear it. I don't know. I can hear it over the last century. It's just filtering through the time stream, and I can just hear this act. And Nacogdoches, Texas.
Mm-hmm.
So I could hear Groucho go, "Oh, so we're in Texas, are we? Where a jackass running down the street is such big news. I thought you had jackasses running down the street every day."
Oh, you got my number there, Gretch. Okay.
Yep. I like this guy. Let's not hang him. We was gonna hang you before you started making jokes. Now we like you. You need a mustache and take this cigar right there. Do like this. All right. Oh yeah, you get to live today.
What an origin story. Now, so when the brothers found they had an aptitude for comedy, soon after they developed themselves into the characters we know and love, like Groucho with his trademark glasses, his grease paint mustache, the cigar, and Stupanova when he walked, Their act became such a popular traveling vaudeville act that they eventually were hired to perform on Broadway in the 1920s, where they primarily remained for most of the decade. They were a huge draw to Broadway. And their biggest hits on Broadway were the plays I'll Say She Is, The Cocoa Nuts, as in like hot cocoa, and Animal Crackers. Those last two were developed into some of their more popular movies. Now, after a lot of complications with moving their act to Hollywood, switching studios and interference with their work from studio heads, can you imagine? The brothers eventually broke up. Their last film together was in 1949. But from the 1930s on, Groucho had been establishing himself as a solo act, which is mainly why he was chosen as the host of You Bet Your Life. The show was originally broadcast on radio in 1947 and then moved to television in 1950. And the show was quite charming. And to put the contestants at ease, they're on live television. They don't really know how to act or, where do I put my hands, So Groucho would often just kind of warm them up with friendly interviews when they would come on stage, often tinged with his off-color brand of humor. They even allowed him to have his duck prop hold the secret word at the beginning of the show,
which has become iconic. Even if you've never seen that show, the whole thing about a duck falling from the ceiling with a word in its mouth.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which I often thought that, whenever I was a kid, I got my historical events mixed up. I actually thought Groucho ripped off Pee Wee Herman with the secret word, and then I realized, oh no, I'm like Groucho was like 40 years before Pee Wee Herman. I apologize. Groucho, Pee Wee Herman kind of ripped you off, but by that point, it's an homage. It's not a rip off. It's an homage.
Yeah, and we just lost Pee Wee too.
We did. This 2023 has not been kind this last month.
But check this out. Groucho's banter has led to one of the best television urban legends. When interviewing a woman who was a contestant on the show, he asked her if she and her husband had any children. She said yes. It depends on who tells the story, but when asked how many children she had, in the version I read, the woman replied 20.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's commitment.
Uh-huh. Groucho was quite shocked and asked the woman, why so many? The woman replied, well, I love my husband.
Apparently, yes.
Yes. After a moment, Groucho replied, well, I love cigars, but every now and then I take them out of my mouth.
Oh, goodness. Amazing.
While Groucho has denied he said this in interviews years later, this became something of a where were you when Kennedy died moment for many who claimed to either have been there or they saw him say it on television and the episode was never aired again.
Mm-hmm.
In any case, Groucho was so popular as the host that he remained on the show for 11 years, even winning an Emmy for the show in 1951. Groucho retired from the show in 1961, but quickly came back with a short-lived reboot, Tell It to Groucho, which lasted only one season. But Groucho was not the only Broadway performer the game show producers recruited for their abilities to draw an audience in. I will include him here because, according to him, Art Fleming, host of the original Jeopardy that ran from 1964 to 1974, he said he was cast in a Broadway musical at age 4. But in all my research, I couldn't find out which one, how long he was on Broadway.
I don't even know what I was doing at age 4. I could have been in a Broadway musical at the age 4, and I don't know.
I'm pretty sure. We just went swimming? I thought it was a Broadway musical. Anyway, Art Fleming, here, I'm going to send you, I told myself I was going to do this. I was going to send you pictures. So I'm going to send you a picture of Art Fleming here.
Aaron,
I know.
Oh my gosh, I didn't ask for that.
I know.
I'm saving it, but I am.
Yeah, and I'll keep you to secrecy on that. Okay. But yeah, there he is.
Wow.
Yeah, very crisp, very clean, very open expression. Like, if he just walked into your house, you'd be like, yes, I will sit down and have a conversation with you.
Kind of looks like a younger version of the drill sergeant from Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah.
You will answer this question, and you will do it now.
Private Pile!
Yeah. What is your major malfunction for 100, Alec?
I'm Vincent D'Onofrio. Anyway, Art Fleming got his job because producer Merv Griffin was looking for someone with the qualities I mentioned early on: part traffic cop, part stand-up comedian, and part kindly uncle. He found Art Fleming on an ad for Trans World Airlines and had him tracked down, basically.
Well, like a print ad?
Oh no, it was a TV ad, but he was like, "That's my guy." Didn't see him on any of the other TV shows he'd already appeared on. He was like a series regular on the Californians, I guess, but no, saw him on that ad.
I could just see him seeing Art Fleming on an ad saying, "That's the guy. I want that guy." Them spending days, weeks, months tracking down this guy, showing up in the office going, "We want you to be the newest host of Jeopardy." "That's amazing. I love Jeopardy. When do I start?" "Oh, was I dubbed in the commercial?" "Yeah, so what? I'll take dogs for 100, please."
"No, I'm sorry. The answer was Nicodemus."
"Your answer must be in the form of a question, you galoot." What's the matter with you? You knows how this game works. All right, let's do the final Jeopardy now, because I'm tired.
"I got some broads in the car."
"Some broads and some blow. Let's go." "You know what? You're the winner because you haven't pissed me off today." That's been Jeopardy, everybody. Good night.
Maybe we shouldn't have picked him just from an ad. I don't know. Now, to state it quite quickly, because we have several more people to cover, Fleming brought a lot of credibility and comfort back to the game show biz. But here's a great story. Fleming was really known to be quite the master of trivia as well. When he appeared on Hollywood Squares years after he was done with Jeopardy, a particularly difficult question about female tennis champions was asked. For those who don't remember, the premise of Hollywood Squares was two contestants would pick an individual from a panel of celebrity guests.
It's a legendary show.
It's a great show.
Legendary.
The host would then ask a trivia question to the celebrity, and the celebrity would respond. Sometimes they were right, sometimes they were not. Then the contestant would agree or disagree, and the answer would be revealed. If the contestant chose correctly, they would advance, et cetera, et cetera. So when Fleming had this question about female tennis champions, Fleming gave his response, and the female contestant said, "Art Fleming would never lie. I agree." She was correct.
Okay, that's awesome. I love that. That's the kind of man who could take over the world.
Right?
Taylor Swift and Art Fleming as a presidential ticket. That's
Swift Fleming.
Yes, Swift Fleming. That sounds like a disease.
Yeah.
That would be why I had to stay home and watch The Price is Right with Bob Barker. Sorry, I have Swift Fleming today.
I have Swift Fleming. I heard it right away and thought it might be a 70s porno, or a porn actor.
Swift. Well, that'd be Swift Martindale right there. You remember Wink Martindale?
Oh my God!
I used to call him Stink Fart and Smell.
Yep.
Which was not nice, but yeah, I don't know. You can't have a name like Wink Martindale and not think of Stink Fart and Smell.
Yep. I keep seeming to do this with my episodes, where I front load with a lot of exposition to set the world up. But I thought the history of game shows was so interesting, especially when there's a period of time that caused game show producers to be innovative and start thinking, hey, let's hire Broadway actors. Seemed like a perfect fit. But before we get back to the second half, I'll encourage you to rate and review the show wherever you're listening. Doing so configures the algorithms of each platform to get this show to more and more listeners. So you're doing something right. As of now, we're number 8 in theater podcasts on FeedSpot, and we've been listed elsewhere, so keep it up. But for now, let's get back to Jason Roy Gaston and find out just how many more Broadway actors have become game show hosts. So yeah, Fleming did win over a lot of people and they trusted him. But moreover, it was his appearances and his personality on Jeopardy that were instrumental for helping the television audience restore its faith in game shows. So absolutely essential for that was trust in your host, right?
Yes.
So producers started to see that perhaps a well-trusted actor with a great personality could be just as good as the slew of radio men with faces for TV. Now, I'm going to try to get the rest of these out in as much detail as I can. But as I said, we have a lot to go over.
Yes. I will try not to interrupt as much as I have been.
You're absolutely fine. That's why I have you on the show. Provide me some damn content.
Well, fine. You asked for it. This is going to be a 4-hour show.
Wonderful. Love it. By the end of this list, though, I think we're going to start to see some common threads. Next one. A very popular staple in the genre of game shows. Oh, my Siri just turned on. Let me say, nope, thanks, Siri, I'm done.
Siri will be hosting a game show before we know it.
Oh, my God. I mean, this whole thing with AIs, it's like, Hal, can you please open the pod bay doors for 500?
Bing. I'm sorry, I don't understand that. No, it'll be the post-apocalyptic show after the nuclear war. It'll be hosted by Siri. Bing. I am sorry, you are wrong. You must die.
It'll be, it'll be 4 skeletons behind podiums. Yeah. So let me start that again. A very popular figure in the genre of game shows was the host of several game shows over the years, including Make the Connection, Choose Up Sides, Do Re Mi, and Tic Tac Doe. But the show that is most often associated with Gene Rayburn is The Match Game.
Yes.
Yeah,
Gene Rayburn.
I'm going to send you that too.
Oh my gosh. I loved The Match Game so much whenever I was a kid. I did not understand any of the innuendos.
Oh my God.
They knew what they were. I don't know how they got those past the censors. I really don't. Because even today I can watch some of that and just go, oh my God, what?
Wow. Yeah.
He's got the Bob Barker mic.
He does have the Bob Barker mic.
Oh my God. I wonder if that is the mic. You think they just passed it down to each other? Or do they steal it from each other? Kind of like Highlander.
Well, yeah, they were filmed at different times and different stages. They're like, is Bob done with it? Please, give me.
I'm sorry, there can be only one. I'm afraid you've been canceled.
Gene's got to go stick it in Phyllis Diller's face right now.
Oh, my.
So, for my listeners that are not familiar with The Match Game, let me just describe this and why Jason and I are so kind of like, wow. This is a show on which contestants would try to win money and prizes by matching a blank in a phrase with a panel of live in-person celebrity guests. And very often the celebrity guests would come from the worlds of comedy, film, television, or stage. When the show first started in 1962, it was pretty much just wholesome fun, but made several changes through the 1960s, and it was briefly canceled in 1969, only to be rebooted in 1973. So that 60s version would be things like, you'd have different song lyrics or something like that. And they'd be like, okay, Marjorie, the phrase is great balls of blank. And then you're like, okay, so great balls of fire. Maybe they can do that. But, the celebrity guests would start coming up with things that were a little raunchy.
Yeah, a little raunchy, yes.
Yeah. and when it was rebooted in 1973, the producers took an idea from one of the iterations in the 1960s and would start to write more suggestive lines for the contestants and guests to fill in. So it was the producers who really started this up. Yeah,
they knew what they were doing.
Yeah,
they weren't sitting there letting Betty White like run things like I'm going to do a euphemism for penis. Yeah. I have a feeling they probably asked these questions to Betty White, and she's like, "Oh God, they're wanting me to do a euphemism of penis." Fine.
Yes, exactly. So it would become something like Little Miss Muffet sat down on a blank, and you'd try to match, and then it would always be something awful.
Yes.
You'd have a Richard Dawson from Family Feud. Little Miss Muffet sat down on my lap.
Another handsy smoochy guy, by the way.
Oh my God, yeah. Who married one of his contestants, by the way.
And
they stayed together forever.
Hey, you know what? At least monogamy came from it. I don't know. I mean,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
I swear that was like that. They should have called that the dating game. It was hello, Marjorie. Hello, Tina. Hello, Johnny.
I meet everyone with my tongue. You're welcome.
Yes. It's how we do things on my planet.
So, yeah, the producers wrote these suggestive lines, and then the celebrity guests are like, well, if you're going there, I'm going to go there too. And they would respond with more and more lurid answers, which made the show way more fun. When John wants to seduce his wife, he often puts on his blank. And oh my God, the answers that would come were just fantastic.
Those 70s celebrities were perverts too.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, it fits in perfectly because it wasn't the dating game and the newlywed game during that time. Yeah, because there's a legendary answer that was given on the newlywed game. Yeah, where's your favorite place to make love? And she was truthful with her answer, which is funny because you were talking about how Groucho asked that question, and he denied it ever happened.
Oh yeah, Bob Eubanks denied that ever happened.
And then somebody found the tape. And it did happen, and the tape was so funny, they actually put it in the movie Confessions of a Dangerous Mind. So if you ever watch that movie and you see that clip about where the favorite place to make love is, that's actually from the Newlywed Game. And that's the infamous clip.
I love it.
Yes.
So in the match game, frequent guests were, as we mentioned, game show host Richard Dawson, Brett Summers, Phyllis Diller, Rip Taylor,
oh yes,
stars from the TV series MASH. We've talked about her several times. Betty White, Tim Conway, and Charles Nelson Riley.
That's a good Charles Nelson Riley. I like that.
Anyway, back to Gene Rayburn. By the time he became the host of the show in 1962, Rayburn was already really familiar to American audiences as the announcer for NBC Tonight with Steve Allen, which eventually became the late night show, The Tonight Show. But even before that, Rayburn was known in this way, quote, he was the Howard Stern of the 1940s, not necessarily in terms of content, but in terms of popularity. He was a morning disc jockey that owned New York City, end quote. And with his partner Dee Finch, they hosted the show Rayburn and Finch on WNEW and more or less created the Drive to Work morning radio show and were able to make quite a few palatable but stinging bits of commentary on pop culture, music, and politics. So everybody just kind of trusted him and his very slick voice. And, you know, he wasn't a terrible looking guy. You know, he's friendly enough, at least, you know, he's no lady killer, but at the same time, they're like, you're passable.
That we know of. I mean,
acquitted.
Acquitted.
However, from a very young age, Gene had always wanted to try his hand at acting. And this is where the link to Broadway comes in. In 1961, he got the opportunity to prove himself as an actor by taking over the lead role in the original production of Bye Bye Birdie on Broadway.
Wow.
He played the role from April 9th, 1961 until the show closed October 7th, 1961. So he got a good 6 months out of it. But here's some other fun trivia about that show. How did Gene get this opportunity? Because the original lead got another gig. Dick Van Dyke had to leave to create the Dick Van Dyke Show.
Oh, wow. What a choice. What a choice.
I mean, what shoes to fill. Who came before me? Dick Van Dyke?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. I could just see the first time you take the stage, some guy in the back goes, "That's not Dick Van Dyke. Who is that?"
You lied to me.
I drove 4,000 miles to see Dick Van Dyke. You're going to give me Dick Van Dyke, or at least put Groucho Marx out here to insult me.
Take that out of your mouth. Now, here's another fun piece of trivia. Who was Gene's understudy for this production of Bye Bye Birdie?
If you say Bob Barker, I'm going to quit.
His frequent celebrity panelist on the match game, Charles Nelson Riley.
Charles Nelson Riley.
Ow!
I love Charles Nelson Riley, but my favorite thing he ever did was The X-Files. He's in one episode of The X-Files, and it's called Jose Chung's from Outer Space. And to me, it's one of the greatest hours of television ever made. And I'm not even being sarcastic. It is such a good episode of TV. Even if you never watch The X-Files, you just watch this and think, wow, what a great story.
Oh, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Anyway, Rayburn returned to Broadway in 1962 in a Neil Simon play, Come Blow Your Horn. But even then, he was a replacement.
Come blow your blank.
Well, I'm thinking trombone. Oh, nope, that's incorrect. But even in this, he was a replacement, and the run soon ended afterwards when he came on board. So I guess it's a good thing he had the match game to fall back on. Okay, lightning round. Even though it's not going to be lightning, I have these are going to be long too. The very popular host of many game shows, Larry Blyden, is best remembered as the host for the reboot of the show What's My Line from 1972 to 1974, when the show was discontinued. However, Larry Blyden had an incredible career before that show with a resume that any actor could aspire to. And here's just a fun little anecdote that I found in my research, so I'm going to add it. As a young man, he was neighbors with another actor, Rip Torn.
Oh my gosh. We're just hitting all of the match game panels, aren't we?
Yep. And as young men, they would often travel in the same circles. And before he changed his name to Larry Blyden, his surname, which was a Jewish name, was pronounced Bleeden. Rip Torn would always joke about his friendship with Larry. I'm torn and he's bleeding. Now, Blyden often claimed that he arrived in New York as a young man with $9 in his pocket. He studied at the Stella Adler School, which is known for teaching the well-known method style of acting, which I've talked about on this show quite a bit.
Yeah.
And he left within 2 years, and in later interviews claimed that the method did, quote, more harm than good for actors.
I agree. Yes.
Yep. I've been pretty vocal about that myself.
I'm sorry. I know I keep interrupting, but this is
no, you're good
here.
Yes.
My theater teacher one time told me that Dustin Hoffman, to prepare for his role in, and I cannot remember the name of the movie for the life of me. I've gone blank with a brain fart. So one where he's
are you going to tell me the story about Marathon Man?
Yes, Marathon Man. I am. Where Justin Hoffman, to play this role where he was being tortured, stayed up for hours and days on end, didn't shower, and he's in this chair, he's flubbing his lines because he's so tired. And of course, the great Sir Laurence Olivier is standing there. And he says, "Dear Dustin Hoffman, are you okay?" "Oh yes, I'm fine. You see, I've been staying up for days so that I can perfectly be a man who's been tortured." And Sir Laurence Olivier just looks at him and says, "My dear boy, have you tried acting?"
I love that story. I love that story so much.
So wonderful. I wish I could go back in time and just buy Sir Laurence Olivier a drink over that one.
Oh man. And you know, Larry's been I call him Larry because everybody else did, and I'm like, well, we're familiar. I'm on a theater history podcast, so I know you.
Of course. I'm sure he knows all about you. Yes.
And of course, he's known for, like completely changing his appearance and making sure he has different gait and stance and everything. Yes. I mean, his Othello is still incredibly controversial because it's like, paint me black. No.
You heard me. I am Sir Laurence Olivier. I was Zeus, or I will be one day. They all thought I was crazy, but who's crazy now?
Well, anyway, leaving the Stella Adler School didn't break Larry Blyden's stride, though. Over the 50s, 60s, and 70s, among a string of television bit parts, canceled sitcoms, and a few film appearances, here's just a short list of the Broadway shows that Larry Blyden was in. And before that, I'm going to send you his picture. Let me see if I'm pretty sure I got it.
Giving you my personal phone number was a mistake. I'm just going to say that.
Didn't get a picture of Larry Blyden. Anyway.
Oh my goodness.
That's fine. Anyway.
I'm going to have nothing. I'm going to have nothing but nudes and pictures of game show hosts on here.
Yeah.
Which ones will he save? Well, so that's for me to know.
So here's a list of Broadway shows. Wish You Were Here, a Joshua Logan musical in 1952 to 1953. The original production of Flower Drum Song, a Rodgers and Hammerstein musical in 1958 and 1959. And Blyden actually, it's set in Asia, so they had to have a lot of Asian actors.
Oh dear.
And yeah, it's a fairly controversial piece today if people are going to do it. And I mean, you got casting, and the part is written to not be always the kindest to Asians. But one thing that was cool that Larry Blyden did was he had he ran an acting school for the Asian performers in this thing because they were just kind of plucked because they looked Asian. And so he's like, well, I guess since you got to be here on Broadway, I'll teach you how to do it.
Well, that's one way of putting it.
Yep.
Sir, I don't know where I am. I was just on my way to school and somebody threw me into a truck and said I'm in a play. Oh, well, we'll find your parents and you're going to be great, kid. Excuse me, I'm a doctor. They took me out of surgery. Is my patient dead? Yes, he's dead. But you're in a play now.
Here are your points for your equity card, and you're welcome. We get a coffee break every 4 hours.
It's all right. Your patient was one of the people who started the game show cheating scandal of the 50s. It's fine.
Boom. Yes. Larry Blyden directed a comedy called Harold, starring Anthony Perkins and Don Adams.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And
Hannibal Lecter and Agent Inspector Gadget.
No, Anthony
Not
Perkins.
Hannibal Lecter. Oh my gosh, Psycho.
Yes, exactly. Norman Bates.
Wow, that was another brain fart.
And Agent 88.
Yes. Did he do the voice of Inspector Gadget? Surely he had to. Okay, I thought he did.
Yes, he did.
Either that or was a really good impressionist.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that show only ran for 20 performances, and then it was canceled.
I wish Inspector Gadget had only run for 20 performances and then was canceled, but I was not a fan.
No, neither was I.
I was one of the only kids. Every time I heard dun 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 dun, dun Inspector.
Let's see. Larry Blyden played Hysterium in a revival of A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum in 1972, for which he won the Tony Award for Best Featured Actor in a Musical. He ended his stage career in the Alan Ayckbourn comedy Absurd Person Singular, which he played from 1973 until his death in 1975. For playing that role, he was nominated for both the Drama Desk Award for Outstanding Featured Actor in a Play, as well as the Tony Award for Best Actor in a Play. So, but everybody seems to remember him as the host of What's My Line. And despite all of this success, in popular culture, that's how he's known, as a celebrity guest host and panelist. And this apparently did not sit well.
Well, I mean, it's logical, though, because more people would have seen him doing that than people who would go sit in a theater.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And like I said, this apparently did not sit well with him. According to sources, he always wanted to make it in film, but by the time of his greatest successes in the 1970s, he was in his 50s, and there just simply wasn't really a place to make him a star or even a character actor in film. In 1975, despite the success of his Absurd Person Singular, he felt somewhat detached from the cast and took a vacation to Morocco. There, he had an unfortunate automobile accident and died from his injuries sustained in the wreck. At the time of his death, he was scheduled to host a new game show, Show Offs, which was basically a televised version of the party game Charades.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So did that one ever air, or do we know?
Oh, when Blyden died, producers had to find a replacement for him. They thought they had struck gold by hiring a venerated Broadway actor as their host, so they looked for someone with a similar resume. They found it in Bobby Van. And here he comes. There's Bobby Van right in your phone right now.
Bobby Van. Okay.
Bobby Van. Okay. You know?
Okay. That's I don't know what it is, but I don't trust that man.
No. He's just there's something about him.
Something tells me he did something in his life to put him on a list. That's all I'm saying. I don't know if that's what happened. I'm just saying that's what it looks like.
Yep. Now, Bobby's resume was very similar to Larry Blyden's in that he had been in several Broadway musicals and even did choreography for some. Bobby was nominated for a Tony Award for his appearance in the 1971 revival of No No Nanette, for which he also did the choreography. Bobby had a lot more success in film than Larry Blyden, though, even appearing in the film adaptation of the very popular musical Kiss Me, Kate. And a cute story about how he chose his stage name. He was born Robert Jack Stein. As many Jewish artists have done to remove any unfortunate connotations and anti-Semitic prejudice that comes when you go into casting, Bobby altered his name and made the legal change years later. He chose the surname Van, recalling how, growing up, his sister had a poster of singer Van Johnson on her wall, and based on the reaction of the female followers of Van and how they'd swoon over him, Van just became his stage name, and then, as I said, his permanent name.
Well, whatever works for you.
Absolutely. And he actually got the opportunity to perform with Van Johnson in Damn Yankees in like a regional version. And I think it was in San Diego.
If he told him. Do you think he told him, like, I changed my name because of you? Okay, that's great. Can you step back, please?
I love how you can make women all smushy.
I love how you can make women all blank. Betty White, smushy.
Richard Dawson, mine.
Bob Barker, spayed or neutered?
Oh, man. Bobby Van went on to host several game shows in the 1970s besides show-offs, and often appeared with his wife as a celebrity panelist on a number of game shows, as she was also a Broadway choreographer. So, yeah, they found Bobby Van. But when I first ran this topic by close friends of the show who I run ideas by, they all said, name some game show hosts. And of course, people knew Groucho Marx and Gene Raber. Larry Blyden and Bobby Van, not everybody remembers their names, but knew their faces. But this name was the one that everyone went, oh, yes, I remember him. And here he comes, Bert Convy.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
What a great perm.
Look at that. I love that hair. Everything. Just, love it.
And he's relatively good looking and not in like a slimy or overtly sexual way. He's just a nice guy, it seems, right?
Yes. He was okay, I feel like I'm about to make a faux pas here. He was the host of Press Your Luck, wasn't he? Or was that somebody else?
I think it was somebody else.
Okay. Okay.
But here, I'll get to it. Bert Convy had even a more impressive resume in film and television than prior two entries on this list, having a string of film appearances and several acting roles in television. He was so popular, he even guest hosted Johnny Carson's Tonight Show on occasion when Johnny would take some time off. You know, it's like when Joan Rivers wasn't available.
Oh, okay.
But perhaps that popularity is because Bert won over the hearts of American viewing audiences as the host of Win, Lose, or Draw.
Win, Lose, or Draw. That's where I remember him from. Yes.
And Super Password.
I even mentioned that. Why did I think? Oh, gosh.
However, Bert's first love was baseball, and he was even scouted and placed on a minor league team for the Philadelphia Phillies, and he played professionally for 2 years. But acting was his true calling, and he eventually made it to Broadway, where he originated the roles of Perchik in the original production of Fiddler on the Roof in 1964, and the lead role of Clifford Bradshaw in Cabaret in 1966.
Very nice. Our local civic theater is doing Cabaret right now.
Oh,
San Angelo Civic Theater. Go buy a ticket. It's a great show.
Mm-hmm. In total, he had 11 Broadway credits to his name.
That's impressive.
Isn't that something?
I'm looking at his wiki right now, and him and Burt Reynolds formed their own production company. It's called Burt and Burt Productions.
Burt and Burt.
And they produce Win, Lose, or Draw. So we can all thank Burt Reynolds for that. I bet you he was probably a guest on that show.
I would imagine so.
What you drawing there? What is that, a housefly? Unicorn. There's no such thing as a unicorn. Yeah. Ask me what I'm drawing. Go on, ask me what I'm drawing. Women like it when I draw my blank. Is that a rocket ship? No, Betty White, be quiet.
All right, Bert, here's your password. I don't like that word. Give me another one.
I don't know why. Every time I try to do an impression of Burt Reynolds, it turns into Groucho Marx. Not my name. What's my name? Turd Ferguson. What do you want?
Well, you see, I got me a lot of chest hair.
How else do you think I managed to make this mustache?
Yep. Now, in today's game show world, we have a lot of hosts who have never really acted before, and were mainly picked for their character traits that we've already mentioned a few times in this episode. But the Broadway bug still seems to bite game show producers, and here are some recognizable faces that can attract audiences. Wayne Brady.
Oh, yes.
He's hosted Let's Make a Deal, Don't Forget the Lyrics, and Game of Talents, but he also played Lola in Kinky Boots on Broadway.
Absolutely.
And for a time appeared as Billy Flynn in Chicago.
Yes, and got his biggest break on a game show called Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Oh, that one. Yes, I've heard
Yes. I always thought Wayne Brady was going to become a big superstar, but I guess the stars just never aligned for him. But I'm glad he's got success because he deserves it. He's doing great.
And just recently came out as pansexual.
Yes, he did.
In an exclusive story to People magazine. You're like, okay, good on you.
I know. It's just like, oh, okay, awesome.
Yeah,
good on you, Wayne Brady. When's the next Whose Line revival coming? That's what I really care about.
Please. And here's my last example. Jane Lynch, who has appeared in a ton of TV and film projects, but might
what
be best
has
remembered.
She hosted?
Oh, check this out.
Okay.
She hosted Hollywood Game Night.
Which is like that's right. Yep. Okay.
Celebrities playing like tabletop games, and the reboot of The Weakest Link.
I did not know that. I have not seen that.
That one surprised me too, but also appeared on Broadway as Miss Hannigan in a revival of Annie, and just this last year as Mrs. Bryce in Funny Girl, which is closing like this week.
Jane Lynch is just, she is so hilarious.
Oh, yeah.
She could read a phone book in a funny voice, and I would pay money to go see it.
And literally for years, she has been this staunch advocate of LGBTQ drama and drama festivals and playwriting competitions. So she's been around the theater world forever too.
Oh yeah.
But you know, she's just one of those faces that people have come to trust. And, you know, they don't bring up like her personal life. And they're just like, just you asked me if I want to be a millionaire, maybe.
And it's so funny because most of the characters she plays are pretty despicable characters. I mean, if you look at the coach from Glee and that stocky woman from the 40-Year-Old Virgin, you would think that would be a woman like, okay, children, let's stand on this side of me. But no, she does. She just has one of those. She has one of those trust me faces, and you do. You're just like, yes, I trust you, Jane Lynch.
Yeah,
I know you're not like that coach from Glee.
I am the weakest link. Thank you for telling me.
Thank you, Jane.
So I guess it's not entirely understood why Broadway actors make good game show hosts, but I'll let this Gene Rayburn quote sink in when he was asked in an interview about the personality of a game show host. It's kind of difficult to define a personality. Part of it is certainly physical. A personality should be pleasing to look at and have a pleasing voice, for example, but there's something more to it. It's really an undefinable quality. You can't acquire it. It's a congenital endowment. I think it has a lot to do with empathy, a feeling that runs back and forth between the personality and the audience. End quote.
I agree. And if you'll allow me to have my own take on that as well, I think that that stage actors are good game show hosts because they're good improvisers.
Yes.
And if something goes wrong or something goes right in the best way, they can flow with it and they don't get freaked out like, you know, not saying that all television and film actors are like this, but some of them are very staunch and they just can't stand a disruption. You know, Orson Welles, for example, if something didn't go right, Orson Welles would shut down. So I can't work under these conditions. But, you know, a Broadway actor can't stop a performance in the middle of a show. They just have to they just have to roll with it. And that's a game show host right there. That's pretending like you are so frustrated with the woman who doesn't know how to play high-low that you have to sit down and put your head in your hands because you know it's funny.
Right. Well, Steve Harvey has made an entire career out of that on Family Feud.
I'm going to ask a question that has an obvious dirty answer. I'm going to give an obvious dirty answer.
Name something round on your wife.
See, he should host the Match Game if they ever bring it back.
Oh my God, wouldn't that be brilliant?
My husband has a very long throbbing blank.
Poodle.
Did you say poodle? I love Steve Harvey. Steve Harvey's, I believe, man. And I've watched Family Feud since before I can remember. I remember Richard Dawson. I remember oh my gosh, Kissy Face. I remember him. So I remember Louis Anderson, but Steve Harvey just brings something so endearingly human to that role. He's almost like the ragged babysitter. Just he's had enough. He's had enough, but you know he loves it.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I think that is such a great quality.
Well, it's also fun to set that up that way too. You know, if you go into that show knowing that the audience or the contestants are going to say something completely off the wall, but you have a straight man there to react to it, then it just enhances the funny.
And, you know, maybe it's an extension of what we were saying today about how Broadway actors are the best hosts. Another well that they get hosts from are from the stand-up comedian.
Yes.
From the stand-up comedian.
Yes.
I don't know what I'm trying to say. I guess talent pool, because you know you do have Steve Harvey, and you had Jeff Foxworthy host that
the fifth grader one,
fifth grader, and I think Bill Engvall hosted one for a while too. And as I said, the late great Louis Anderson was the host of Family Feud before Steve Harvey came along too. But yeah, I mean, what is a stand-up comedian but a Broadway actor who's just not on Broadway and not doing a play at the time? They're improvised.
Right. Well, and for better or for worse, that's my story today. But yeah, I think you're hitting on it. Like somehow it just dawned upon producers that you already have this talent pool who is ready to handle unexpected circumstances. They are ready to roll with the punches, and they already know how to keep an audience in suspense.
Indeed, yes.
So yeah, there we go. I'm absolutely convinced now that, you know, they found a market that would consistently bring positive results every single time.
Absolutely. Always trust the people who stand up on stage and deal with the things they didn't know they were going to deal with.
Yeah. I've not been to too many like live big comedy shows. I got to see George Carlin about a year before he died.
Oh my gosh, I'm envious. I was going to go see him at Bass Hall in 2002, and I got something I had to do. I was like, oh, I can't go this time, but I'll go next time. And there was no next time. And I think George knew, and I think he was laughing about it, like, hey, I should have bought the ticket now, you jerk. But he didn't say jerk.
No, he wouldn't.
George Carlin would have made an amazing game show host, by the way.
Oh my God. That would have been great.
So y'all want to win money so you can take part in the capitalistic society that's draining this country dry. Well, let's do it then. You can all suck my blank. Mr. Carlin, this is Family Feud. I know.
Congratulations, you just won $500. That could feed a homeless person for an entire year.
Oh my gosh, that's a great George Carlin.
Oh, I've listened to him forever.
I love it.
But I remember going to see that show and just being amazed that there were still people out there heckling him. Oh, and I'm like, you know who this is, right? One, he's not going to do anything about it because he knows you're just being an asshole.
Yeah, that's like throwing it. That's like throwing a rotten tomato at the Terminator. It's just gonna not even look at you. It's just gonna go by, and you're gonna feel smaller because of it. I think I saw a video where George Carlin reacted to a heckler once.
Yeah,
and he just unloaded this verbal tirade.
Oh man.
And I just because of my job and everything, I can't repeat anything he said. But it was enough. He said something about put something in his mouth so he'll shut up, and he went into great detail about the thing that should be placed into this heckler's mouth so that he would stop talking. And it was probably like a 15-minute bit in this entire show, just him going on and on about how much this guy needs to shut up. And I just I would love just to talk to that man.
Chef's kiss.
What were you thinking? That's like David and Goliath if David flew the rock in the wrong direction.
I know. That's Leatherface tripping.
Yes. Leatherface tripping onto his chainsaw.
Oh, man. But, as they say, the show must go on. Can you believe that so many Broadway actors have become prolific game show hosts? When I was first telling people the idea for this episode, I got a similar question from many of them. Really? How many can there be? And at one point, my count was 9. But I'm sure I missed some, and if I did, feel free to reach out to me. I've got Instagram pages for both Trident Theater and Euripides Humanities, and while you're there, check out my great guest today, Jason Roy Gaston, on all his socials too. My many thanks go out to him for all his contributions to this episode. For now, though, I'll sign off. This is Aaron Odom, ending another episode of Euripides Humanities, a theater history podcast. Another episode will be in your ears in 2 weeks, and I will see you at intermission.